to go. Everyone has their microphones set up, so we're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your lunch break with us this lovely day. My name is Teresa Wall-Sibb, and I teach the Judicial Externship Seminar here at Golden Gate. And I am grateful to LCS who has sponsored this event today and helped me bring in some speakers who can tell you more, shed some light into what it's like to work for the courts. So before we get started, I wanted to let you know we have some handouts here. Can give you more information, nuts and bolts, on what is a judicial externship, how to get started on searching for one that might be the best for you. You're always welcome to contact me and the staff at LCS to get more information. The goldenrod sheet here gives you an overview of the kinds of courts, but this certainly isn't exhaustive. There are many other opportunities within administrative courts, within certain departments within the courts. So again, if you have an interest in this, please do reach out. And then finally, the blue sheet is on more general externships. So we have, in addition to judicial externships, criminal externships, one for veterans advocacy, and many others, civil department as well. So take a look at this. And before I go forward and introduce our speakers, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about what a judicial externship is. So plainly, it's an opportunity to work with the courts. That's pretty obvious. But what students may not know is that it's also an opportunity to get a really rich experience that you might not get, say, in a law practice. You can get greater exposure to a particular practice area. So on our panel right here, we have labor and employment, we have habeas corpus, there are other criminal actions. Casey has worked in a court to see both the criminal side and the civil side, and Andrea has worked in the federal courts and also extern in the state courts. So you have an opportunity to see a whole different side of a practice area. So whether you're interested in immigration law, family law, veterans' rights, you can usually find a court for that. So you can get a different perspective and become just more depth in how you can practice. It's going to give you greater research and writing practice. And for some of you, that might be a turn off, right? However, getting these skills, getting the feedback, learning a different way to write, seeing what kinds of writing processes work for a judge, for a research attorney, and what doesn't work, can really behoove you as you start to practice as an advocate, because you say, aha, I know what the judge wants. So now I have a leg up in what I want to ask for. You're also going to get the chance to observe court procedure and find out what kind of work works on the floor of a courtroom. What kind of advocacy works? What kind of demeanor? What kinds of arguments? What kinds of questions really work? Also, you can develop a critical eye for what kinds of arguments are effective, learn about policies that impact our courts and justice system, get an opportunity to sit in on meetings that may otherwise be closed doors, something like a settlement conference, and get some real insight into how cases stay away from going to trial. And even get a glimpse into what goes into a judicial decision-making process. Now, our judges here today and former externs and staff attorney cannot speak to what the judicial process, decision-making process is, because that is highly confidential. But as an extern, this is something that you could glean. All right. I am pleased to introduce Mr. Michael Diebert. My goodness. He's externed for the Honorable John Noonan for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. He is also clerked for the Honorable Samuel Conti with the U.S. District Court, Northern District of California. And currently, he is a staff attorney for the same court within the Pro Se Department. He's been there from 2007 to the present. He also was born and brought up in Sonoma County, so my hometown, or my home county. He got his master's in philosophy from Oxford in English Renaissance literature, is that correct? Yes. And his JD from Hastings. Next to him is our own Casey Crittenden, who formerly externed to Judges Chu and Chernis with the Marin County Superior Court, where he worked on both criminal and civil matters. He's also extern in a private civil firm, Benjamin Weil & Mazer, and has provided research assistance for professor needs. He's a 3L here at GGU and graduating in May. Next to Mr. Crittenden is the Honorable Terrie Brodie. Judge Brodie began her federal career as an attorney with the Department of the Navy, Military Seacliff Command, representing the Department of the Navy in cases before the EEOC. That's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where she is currently, and also the MSPB. She then served as an administrative judge with the EEOC San Francisco District Office from 1993 through 2008, and she assumed the Chief Administrative Judge position in 2009. She holds a JD from Golden Gate University. And finally, we have Andrea Lowe. Ms. Lowe is a former clerk to the Honorable Frederick Block, the U.S. District Court, Eastern District of New York, and to the Honorable Beverly B. Martin, U.S. District Court, Northern District of Georgia. She is also extern to the Honorable Ann I. Jones of the Los Angeles Superior Court, and has worked as a litigation associate with Weil, Gottschall, and Manjus, as well as Patterson, Belknap, Webb, and Tyler. She received her JD from the University of Michigan and is currently the Director of Employer Outreach here at GGU. So I am happy to have you. Thank you. So I'd like to start off with having each of the panelists either tell the group here more about what you do, or for those who are former externs, what you did for the courts. So, Mr. Diebert.
Oh, great. Hi. So what I do as a pro se staff attorney at the Northern District is we handle the unrepresented prisoner cases before all the judges, and that's about half habeas and half civil rights. So it's inmates in state prisons who've been convicted in state court, who've exhausted their state court remedies and are now coming to federal court for relief. And the other part of the sorts of cases we get are civil rights cases brought under Section 1983, challenging the conditions of confinement in prison, medical care, religious freedom, that sort of thing. And what we have our externs do is the same sort of work that we do, which is to work on submitted cases, cases that are fully briefed. If you would work on a habeas petition, you would actually be looking at the merits of the arguments, what the state has said, what the petitioner has said, and then writing up an order that would be sort of analyze and dispose of the case. So we have our externs do, they're not made up assignments, it's the actual work that we do. And then we have them work closely with the staff, one of the staff attorneys, and reviews the work and sculpts it, and they go through the revision process, and eventually that order that you write goes to the judge for signature and approval.
Right. So your externs tend more to be drafting the actual order that goes
Yes.
out rather than memos?
Yes, it's usually the order. It's a shortcut, and it's sort of it's fun to do because you give them a pile of papers and you say go read, and then come back in a day or two and we'll talk about the law and the facts, and then do you think you're ready to write something? Yes, good. How about something in a week? Good. And then we get it back and we do a lot of revising and talking about the law. And the externs who've externed for us a bit, I get a lot of them coming back and saying, I really liked the fact that we read a lot and wrote a lot and had critiques on that. So it was very helpful for them.
Super. Thank you. Mr. Crittenden?
Excuse me. So I had a really great opportunity last spring with two judges at Marin Superior. One for the first half was in criminal, and the second half was in civil. I don't want to litigate, so it was a really great opportunity to kind of affirm that and to be able to kind of really see what happens behind the bench, which I think is a fascinating thing. It's really, I love it back there. In the criminal side, under Judge Chu, I was assigned a lot of memos. Normally in gray area, obviously in gray areas, and a lot of it was in sort of the judicial procedures that were a little bit gray, and they still remain gray within the state court. Things that the lawyers necessarily wouldn't encounter, but from a judge, those are really important things that they have to take into account and balance. We actually received a lot of habeas petitions, and I wrote a lot of orders on the original habeas petition that would come from San Quentin. San Quentin's in the jurisdiction of Marin County, so we would get a lot of these original, that's where it originates. The habeas petition originates in the state court. and they are really interesting. And I would draft the order, get great feedback from the judge, and be able to kind of discuss with him, you know, sort of why I want to help them, but where sort of what the relief they're asking for may not be something that we can give. And then on the criminal, sort of more, if there'd be a motion that would come through, and he'd ask us to brief it, or ask me to brief it, to kind of give an idea about where sort of the points of authority are in this. Civilly, well, let me just say real quickly, on the criminal side, there's a lot to do. It's moving very quickly, and being in court there is interesting. It moves very efficiently, or as efficiently as it can. So being able to sit there and watch that happen was pretty informative. On the civil side, which was the second half, I had a chance to draft a statement of decision for a really complicated case, and that was, he read it into the record, and that was I was pretty proud of that. I stayed up till like 3:30 in the morning the night before finishing it. I emailed it to him, and he was like, oh, I'll just look it over, and he didn't look it over, and then he read it into the record, and I could hear my editing errors, and everything was fine, but it was intense, so, yeah.
So you've got some real frontline type of experience as well
Yeah.
as staying back in the middle.
Yeah, both, you get to see both sides, which was really, really cool.
Thank you. Judge Brodie?
Thank you. Well, before I go into what I do now, because of what a couple of the other panelists had said, I wanted to talk about what I did when I was in law school, and that is I was an extern for Judge Jensen in Federal District Court, and that was such a significant and pivotal experience in terms of my decisions. There was, and I think I've told some people this story, that Marco was the attorney that was supervising my work, and every time I wrote something, he had a green pen. He would come back with, there was more green than black on the pages. And finally, the other extern and I who went to Hastings just felt so horrible that our work was being edited to pieces. We went to Marco and said, when we get our work back, all this green all over it is just really difficult to deal with. And Marco's response was, would you prefer I use a different color ink? But really, in retrospect, Marco editing to piece what I did over and over was the best thing he could have done. And if you do have someone that gives you that time, really cherish that. So segueing into what I do now is that EEOC has two sides of it. There's the private side, when individuals file complaints of discrimination, they work for a private company, versus federal, and that's the side that I go on. There's two different ways the people process works. So federal agencies, someone that works for the Department of Treasury, the Postal Service, any of those agencies, if they want to file a complaint of discrimination, they have to file with their own agency, and then ultimately they can request a hearing before an EEOC administrative judge, and that's when it comes to us. There are 6 judges in our office, and if the case does go to a hearing, it's a very informal process. If there's attorneys on both sides, it becomes much more formal, but there's not always attorneys on both sides. But our externs do everything that we're doing, except that it goes out under our name. So for example, and a lot will depend on when the individual is externing. If there's a hearing going on, we have the extern come to the hearing if they're available. If they are staying long enough, we ask them to draft the facts of the decision. If a lot of what we have our externs do is motions for summary judgment, look at the motion, the response, and draft a decision. Sometimes we have the externs send out orders and looking at discovery issues, which no one in our office wants to deal with discovery, so we actually have an extern this semester that wants to learn about discovery, and so we're really excited about that one. And so the only thing that I would want to underscore is that the most important thing in this kind of externship, and probably many other judicial externships, is writing. And it is, I think, if it doesn't come naturally to you, the best thing to do is just write and write and write, and expect that if people are giving you input and telling you why you did something wrong, look at that as a gift.
Thank you. Ms. Lowe?
Hi. I spent the summer after my 1L year as an extern at the Los Angeles Superior Court in the criminal division. For those of you who don't know, the Superior Court is the trial court level for the state court of California. A lot of what I did was just pure trial observation, and in that particular courthouse, they had a lot of trials going on at all times. So I would make friends with the courtroom deputies and the bailiffs, and they would tell me, okay, today we have X, Y, and Z going on, and they direct me to a certain courtroom where there were some particularly skilled attorneys who were doing opening arguments or jury selection or cross-examination. So that was really interesting. We had a lot of gang murder trials, which sounds kind of gruesome, but was very intense and interesting at the same time. In addition to observation, I did research. My judge was working on a state level habeas corpus handbook, so I did a lot of research for that. And then I also helped resolve different motions that she had coming in. So similar to other people who have taught, a lot of research and writing as well. But I had a fabulous experience. The LA Superior Court puts together a whole program where they hire a bunch of different externs and then assign you to a particular judge. And in addition to working for the judge, they have weekly lunches where they bring in people and just talk to you about different legal subjects. So I found that to be really helpful as well. And then again, just seeing the backside of how decisions are made, talking with the judge through the whole process was really valuable as well. And then I'll also say that the LA Superior Court is looking for externs for this summer. So if anyone is interested, there's some handouts up where all the gold sheets are as well. And if we run out, just let me know. I can give you the information.
Thank you. So I heard you say that you got some great information by befriending the bailiffs and the court clerks. How important would you say it is to get to know everyone on the staff of the court, not just be pleasing a judge?
Oh, I think that's definitely really, really important and something always to keep in mind. You never know what, I just think it's always important to be very courteous to everyone, no matter what their level, whether you think that you have more education or more experience or whatnot, because everyone has valuable information and it's good to know, and you just want to be very aware of how you're presenting yourself, not only to the judge, but everyone that they work with. So it kind of goes without saying.
Thank you.
If I can just add to that, our clerk, she is pretty much my eyes and ears of the office. So people may not know that, but she, she's my source of information. So you never know who's going to be communicating information.
Thank you. So as externs, were there any surprises in the work that you got? Were you ever shocked to get a project or think, wow, I didn't know that the courts work this way? What was your biggest surprise in learning about the court?
I'll just start. So by the way, you know the habeas handbook? I think I edited that.
There are lots of
I ended up writing a bunch of memos on the habeas from that. So anyway, that was really interesting. So I think the biggest thing was, well, how underfunded the courts are. And, I think that was sort of shocking. But you can understand how passionate the judges are about really moving the system along and not being as efficient as they can. And everyone sort of in the court, you kind of get that sense that there is this, like everyone that's worked together to move this along.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I found most interesting was not a particular topic, although with habeas, because we usually get murder cases, there are a lot of gruesome facts, which I enjoy reading about, I have to say. But what I found, it was one of the first times as a lawyer that you realize how significant what you do is. Not that you are an important person in that, like, you're dealing with somebody's fate in one way or another. And when you're dealing with serious facts and serious law, it's one of these things that sort of weighs with you, like, wow, this is going to affect someone's life or someone's incarceration or someone's medical treatment. And you realize, and then you realize when you have it as an attorney, you can't blame other people. It's like, no, it's on your desk and it's your responsibility. And it makes you feel a level of respect for the work, and you realize why lawyers are sort of held to a high standard of behavior, because there's so much writing in what you do, and you can't blame other people because you are the one writing the order and you are the one implementing it. And so that was the thing for me when I externed, is that I just feel like, oh, this is this is serious. And that was something that really struck me when I started doing actual legal work.
Judge Brodie mentioned that one of the biggest takeaways she got from her externship was that to realize that the feedback you get on writing is a gift. Are there any other, what was your best lesson during the externship? If you could, that served you well as you practice.
Well, it did surprise me how much the judge I worked for actually cared about the individual cases. And one decision that I wrote that kept getting edited, you could tell that his heart was in this decision, and it meant a lot to him how it came out in terms of the impact that it would have. And that was a takeaway, and I see that in terms of the judges in this office too, is that they can get overwhelmed with the number of cases, but they look at these cases as individuals and people whose lives are sometimes in really dire circumstances.
I think I was surprised just on the way that judges really rely on their externs and clerks to help them out. Because they have just a very voluminous caseload. They can't know the facts or the background of every single one of their cases. So they rely on you to know that information cold. And I was just surprised I would go in and say, here, I think that we should do X, Y, and Z. And the judge would really listen and say, okay, well, why? And I would have to defend my position. And then more often than not, he would actually agree. Or there would be a trial going on, and he'd come back in a flurry and say, okay, you have 5 minutes to research this evidentiary question. I have to go upstairs and rule on it. And it was really kind of a lot of pressure, but fun at the same time. You would give him the answer, and he would go up and put it on the record and rule in a certain way, and that's the direction that the trial would go in. So that's something that really surprised me, but it was great at the same time.
When you had those high pressure moments, did you have a go-to for research, or was there a particular person where you said, okay, I'm going to look this up and then I have to bounce it off of a peer or a research attorney?
Generally, when that happened, all of the clerks in the chambers would be researching the same thing and kind of come together at the end and talk about it and come to a consensus and then present it to the judge. So it was definitely good to have other people to bounce things off of and sort of relieve a little bit of that pressure too. But you get a lot of great practice researching, and so you build your skills that way. You can be confident about what you're capable of.
Based on the skills that you learned in the court with research and writing and working with the judges, did you find that easily transferable into a litigation career?
I think definitely, yes. And that's something as a new associate that firms and employers are really going to value, your ability to research and write effectively. I think one of the challenges with research is that you never really know if you found the right answer or if you've done enough research. And so you just get a lot of practice having this sense of, okay, I feel confident, I've looked into this for long enough, and I don't have 100% confidence that this is the answer, but I feel fairly good about it. And you just get a sense of when you should keep looking and when you should stop. So that was definitely really helpful.
And Casey, how about for you? So I know that you probably don't want to work with the courts straight out, so how has this helped be transferable?
Areas of law that I were very new to me were assigned to me. I worked alone. We didn't have. I had research attorneys to go to, but they were really busy on a lot of stuff. So it was left on me to learn, sort of my research strategy for trying to solve what for me is a novel piece of law. And so that was, I think, the biggest takeaway. Learning my research process, learning my writing process, and that's invaluable in everything, litigation or transaction or anything. I mean, we're always going to have to be able to research law or research policies to inform our clients or be informed.
And Judge Brodie and Mr. Diebert, do you want to speak to that at all? How the externship prepared you for the work you're doing today?
Well, I mean, I think I sort of kept on being an extern now. I was getting paid for it, so I mean, I externed for Judge Newton the summer after my first year of law school, and I knew instantly this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for the courts. I liked the issues we dealt with. I liked sort of the athletic intellectualism that happens. That people there's sort of this debate and you get to think about things and talk about them, and it was sort of academic, and that's what really appealed to me. And then I summered at a firm the next summer, and that made me realize that I did want to work for a court. And so I've been able to do what I really love, which is doing this sort of monkish writing and research that we do, and I love it. It's very satisfying, and I think that, I mean, as you were saying, that, you know, even though you're not going to go on to do criminal law necessarily, that it's just the way with law in general is that you're thrown in the deep end and you learn how to swim. And with litigation, you know, one time you'll do patent law, and then you'll do copyright law, and then you'll do, you know, some kind of infringement law. And so you always have to learn new things as a lawyer anyway. And so even if you're not going to go into criminal law or habeas law or prison law, it's a great way to train your mind and to gain confidence that, like, I can go into a new area of law and find out the basics and be able to work within it. So that's, I think those were the skills that, I think those are the experiences that were really helpful overall.
Wonderful. Thank you. Judge Brodie?
I would just say that having been in a courtroom and seeing what goes on behind the scenes would help any litigator understanding all that's gone on that they don't see, and then they go into the courtroom and what they do see, they don't understand everything that's been discussed beforehand.
Thank you. What, as supervisors of externs, what are your expectations? When someone comes in for an interview, what are you looking for?
I think the most important thing is just to be enthusiastic about the opportunity. And like Casey said, it's a great way to learn if you are or are not interested in litigation. So you don't have to go in there saying, I want to be a litigator and do X, Y, and Z after. Yeah, just someone who's really enthusiastic, who wants to learn, who's up for any type of assignment that you give them. And that's why.
I think that's really true. I mean, you want someone who is, you know, if you have someone who's morose or isn't friendly, you know, usually I don't know about this person, because you're clearly qualified for the job. If you got the interview, your paper qualifications, we've said, you're clearly qualified. And then what you want to do in any interview is you want to prove to that person that you're the sort of person they want to work with. And so, and you certainly have to come across as positive and interested, and like you don't have to have, I know a lot of people said, I don't like criminal law, I don't have anything to do with it, but I thought this would be interesting to try it out. And so you don't have to have a deep interest in it, but you do have to have an eagerness. I think that's really, and to have, you know, just a happy, positive attitude.
Yeah, I can't say I'm looking for a happy, positive attitude. If you're depressed and you can write. It's been interesting, the interns that I've interviewed, I've asked them, what do you know about the EEOC, and they've all read the website, which is really, really good, because I can imagine someone just coming in not knowing anything about it. So I would say know as much as you can about where you're going to interview, so that you look like this is actually something that you want to do, not just, I'll just throw my hat in the ring. And I think know in your own mind, because usually what I end up telling people, I can't think of anyone that I haven't told this to, is that I really want to give everyone an opportunity if they understand how much writing is involved in this job and understand what they're getting into. I want you to think about, is this really what you want to do for your career? And so I wouldn't, for us, I'd say if you're not enthusiastic, of course don't be really unenthusiastic, but you can interview with us and be uncertain about what you want to do, because if this is not what you want to do, it's a lot of work for something you don't want to do.
Thank you. And Casey, was there any particular class that really well prepared you?
Yes. In the fall term, so the term before going to that, I took advanced legal research, which is so invaluable. I think it should be required in your second year of fall term. Specifically when a lot of the memos and a lot of these that are in legislative history, and how a state statute sort of got there, and what its intentions and purposes were. It's difficult to figure out if you haven't been exposed to how you get there. So that's just one example. Other than that, it is an invaluable course.
Thanks very much. All right, so I heard a little bit of what not to do, at least in an interview from Judge Brodie, so don't be unenthusiastic about this. But do you have any tips for the group here about What not to do as an extern? Any two don'ts?
I think most of them are, you already know them, right? So don't be mean, don't be lazy, don't be late, don't skip work, all of those kind of practical things. I would try and go to as many events as possible, if there are events, even informal ones, that other externs are doing, lunches or after work type things. It's a really great way to get to know the types of experiences that they're having and how their judges are, and just other interesting things about them.
Most of my externs are really well paid, so they're self-regulating, so I haven't really had to approve anyone.
Is there any dress code?
No shorts, no flip-flops, no ripped off. Externs are usually very good. The ones that they come wearing, the first day you dress rather formally, and then if no one says anything, keep dressing formally. I always say, great, you dressed formally the first day, that's what you should do. From now on, you're quite well, you don't have to wear a tie, you don't have to, you have to be suitably dressed, but you don't have to wear a suit and tie every day. Although some schools require their externs, like no matter what they say, wear a suit and tie, then, it's whatever the school says, but, yeah.
Oh, I would also add, just realize that at the end of the day, the judge you're working for is the judge. I co-clerked with someone who kind of took it a little too far in terms of the respect that the judge gave her opinion and would argue nonstop with him about something and wouldn't back down. And at the end of the day, he gets to make the decision. He's the one signing the order and making the ruling, right? So realize that you are there to help him or her and advocate your position strongly if you're confident about it, but realize that they are the decision maker.
And along with that, realize that the judge is human. The judge may have things going on outside of work. The judge is probably overwhelmed with things going on inside of work. And so try to have as thick skin as you can. If someone hasn't gotten back to you about your work, try not to take it personally. You can ask what's going on with this. And usually, at least in our office, it's just because everyone is so busy. So you do need to take the initiative to make sure that you're not forgotten.
I would, a couple of quick things I would hit. Immediately start your writing. So start right away. Things will start piling. You'll have a couple of memos that may be ongoing, and then something will come in, and you'll figure that out. And then secondly, this is a small thing. After you've gotten the externship, really make clear with the judge about what the best way is to communicate with them. So they're on the bench most of the time, except for that lunch break. And if you need some responses, so for my judge, email was really good. And if he needed me, I could go behind. If I could go behind and he was not in court, and his door was open, I could go in. But it was good to at least establish. So here's how we can communicate. And I don't think that was something that he had sort of contemplated.
I know with my externs, our externs are paired with one or two pro se staff attorneys, and we're always available for questions and help and consultation. And it's always, but I always instruct them, it's better to ask a question than not ask a question. However, it's best if you really mull the question over well, do some research. So you don't just come in and say, well, I don't know anything about due process. Have you, do some research, and when you come up against a wall, look, I've done my research, and this is where I'm sort of pinned against the wall. That's much more helpful than coming in and saying, well, I don't know where to start, or I don't know where to begin. Try to do something. And we were always available for consultation, but at the same time, it's a very self-directed job that you get as an extern. I said, the job is you sitting at a desk, reading through, Westlaw cases and the record and producing a written product. And I'm here for consultation and everything, but it's about you being self-disciplined and self-directed to produce an order. And that's the other part of the training that I think is very helpful, that you really learn to, okay, I have to figure this out as much as I can.
Ms. Lowe and Judge Brodie, would you agree?
Oh, definitely, yes.
So, Mr. Crittenden, you brought up an interesting point, I think, about communicating. So how about maintaining contact? Are you still in contact with your judges?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So They're a great resource for your moral character application. Both are in Marin County. Yeah, I had lunch with them a few months back together. We go to this place, and it's nice to be able to visit about things outside of outside of court. I get a sense, working on the bench is difficult. So I think for them, when you can bring a little life into just a little life into the chamber is nice. But yeah, of course, stay in contact. Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
For the rest of you, do you stay in touch with your externs?
Oh, yes. We had 2 interns when I was in New York, and they were there for the summer. I'm still in touch with them. I actually was a reference for one of them for his, summer position interviews, and was called by an employer. And it's just really nice to keep in touch and hear what they're doing, find out where they've gone for the summer, and all of that information.
I certainly am. I've acted as a reference for a lot of externs, and I like doing that because the people who you recognize as really smart and very good, and you want to help them as much as you can. I mean, one of the best externs I had, I'm not just saying this because I'm here, was from Golden Gate, and he was fantastic, and he was writing at a really mature level. And I mean, I thought so much of his work that when sort of a part-time temporary position came up in our department, I called him up and I said, you might want to consider applying for this because I really remember your work, and you were at such a high level and we needed somebody in sort of short order. For whatever, he couldn't do it for whatever reason, but he'd stuck in my mind because he'd externed and he'd done such a great job. So, and it's nice to help people and for have people to, and I've had people write me letters later saying, God, thank you so much for the externship, it just really helped my skills later in being a lawyer. So we love having externs, it's fun for us too.
Thank you. So before I wrap up and perhaps reiterate some of the advice you've already given, I want to remind everyone here that LCS is here to help with all of your applications. So whether you decide to apply to a judge or to a certain department within the courts or an agency, LCS is there to look over your applications, your resumes, your cover letters, keep them close to you as you go through this process. They're here to help you. And I'm available too for any sort of questions about this process. So in wrapping up with everyone, I heard a lot of great advice throughout the last 40 minutes. Be sure to take editing as a gift. Cherish it when you're getting the advice, the feedback, even though it might be painful to be getting it at first. Be nice. Be nice to the bailiffs, the clerks, the whole staff. Recognize that they're the court's eyes and ears. Be willing to learn new things. Jump in. Get your feet wet. You're going to be able to gain confidence with this process. Go to networking events. Be human. Show up. Give it your best shot. So is there any other advice that you would say, this is my best advice to people who want to become externs?
Have someone proofread your cover letter and
There you go.
It's one of those things where someone, you can see in the first sentence like, you didn't have anyone read this, did you? Not that sinks your application, but it's one of those things that you do know when someone it's just even your friend, anyone, like your mom, have someone read it. Is there anything in here that doesn't make sense or that you think it was an error? Or another set of eyes to look over your stuff.
Thank you.
That is really good advice, because even applications where there's no typos or anything like that, the way that the sentences are structured sometimes is that's a reflection on someone's writing ability. And so if they're not understanding parallel construction in their resume, then they're not going to understand any decision. So it is good to have someone who understands those things with your resume.
So for the next 10, 15 minutes or so, I welcome the students to come up and speak with our panelists, ask any questions that you like. So it's a good time. Thank you very much.